Variables are used to store a value that can be changed. We basically have three ways in Bash how to assign a value to a variable. First one is explicit definition, where we assign some value to a variable using equal sign. Second option is to use a read command, where we store some user's input into variable. Third option is command substitution, and basically we are storing here output of some command into variable. Now, let's look more deeply on the first way how to assign value to a variable, explicit definition. For explicit definition, we are using name of the variable, here represents as var, equal sign, and a value we want to assign into variable. Keep in mind that you cannot do any spaces next to the equal sign, which is hard if you already have worked with some programming languages, but it has very good reason and I will tell you later in this lecture. But now let's check some more examples of explicit definition. Count equals 5. Here you can see that we can store number. Path equals varlib. We can definitely store path into a variable. Dog's number equals 8. In most programming languages, this would be the correct way how to assign value 8 into variable called dog's number. But do you remember what I told you at the beginning? In Bash, when we are assigning value to a variable, we cannot have any space next to the equal sign. Why is that? Because what Bash sees is not an assigning, but Bash instead thinks that you want to try to run command called dog's number with two arguments. Equal sign is the first argument and number 8 is the second argument. Here is really important to keep in mind that on Unix-like systems, when we call some command, we starting by calling the name of that command, then is the space and some arguments. We can take as an example ls command. Here we have ls space and -l as a first argument. And because we can use in Bash system commands such as ls, pwd, change mode, Bash needs some way how to differentiate between calling some commands and assigning some value to a variable. So because of that, we don't use any spaces next to equal sign in Bash when assigning value to a variable. As we can see in another example, we can store into variable some text. But when we want to store some sentence, we need to use apostrophes to properly store whole sentence. If we don't do that, Bash would think that in our examples we are trying to run command body after assigning part. You may have noticed that I am using variable names in capital letter. This is not needed, you can definitely use lowercase if you want, but in most scripts is variable represents by capital letter, so my recommendation is stick to that convention. Now let's check how we can access variables. We are accessing variables by prepending $sign before the name of a variable. But instead of talking, let's write some script to see how it is behaving.